later. You can do that. Not right now. Okay, so we have our live feed going. Your guys' job is to make sure that you guys are paying attention. In between, I'll allow you guys to talk with your table partner, debrief that. At the end, I'll have you guys discuss and debrief it, and then you guys will kind of render your own decision. Would you say that Hitler's guilty or not guilty based off of the things that are presented? So be paying attention. If I need to, I can assign more busy work to keep you guys focused, but hopefully I don't need to. Is that fair? I am recording, yes. So if you guys need it, you guys could access it. Cool. And I can look at it. Yeah. No, I want you to play this one. You can be thinking about yours, like how maybe you're learning things from this one for yours, but I want you to be activated for this one. Yeah, I want to get these guys.
That's why it's good to have I have been on
All right, here we go. All rise. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. The Honorable Justices of the ICC now presiding. You said you may be seated. You may be seated. Sorry, that was jumping. I'm very confused. It's fine. It's fine. Super confused. Okay. All right. So then you guys. Sorry. Is it Luke then? Yes. Okay. So we can say you guys now begin your oral arguments. You now begin your oral arguments. And you guys will stand up. You come up to the podium. You guys are just both stand up here together. And then I've got the time. You guys will have 12 minutes. If you finish early, you can just yield the time. But last class, the entire time.
May it please the court. My name is Kayla Adolf, and along with my partner, Nora Holland, we are here today representing the people of prosecution. Your Honors, Adolf Hitler is guilty of crimes against humanity for 2 reasons.
Pardon this interruption, denying a walker to the office?
First, the discrimination and genocide against Jews and other religions, also known as the Holocaust, and second, the invasion of the Soviet Union. To our first point, Adolf Hitler and his army started the Holocaust. Jews were taken from their homes and forced onto a train, not knowing what was to come. They arrived at concentration camps and spent in gas chambers and later executed. Our point isn't just that he did this, but that he committed crimes against humanity. Mass genocide is considered a crime against humanity. And if the killing of 6 million Jews isn't mass genocide, then I don't know what is. The Rome Statute investigates and prosecutes crimes committed by anyone on their territory. Lots of countries in Europe are under the authority of the Rome Statute, and Hitler was invading and destroying that territory. Adolf Hitler.
Was it just Hitler? Was Hitler the only one that killed the 6 million people? And if it wasn't just him, is that still considered genocide on his part?
Well, it wasn't just him, it was his troops, but he was in charge of it all, and he could have put it to a stop if he wanted to, but he didn't do it. It's mostly his fault. Adolf Hitler came to power with the goal of establishing an individual order in Europe, dominated by the German master-race. His goal was to make sure everyone is the same race as him, and in no way is that self-defense. If you need extra evidence, I have family members who will tell you all about it, because they have actual proof that this happened.
Well, was there a reason that Hitler hated the Jewish people and that he wanted everyone to be like him?
I don't know what went on in his mind.
Which leads us to our second point, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Hitler invaded the Soviet Union because he wanted to take over Moscow.
He wanted to take over Moscow to dispossess the Russian inhabitants. Hitler and his troops estimated that they could conquer Moscow in 3 months before winter, but they failed. I have proof of that from IWN.com. It says, Operation Barbarossa had clearly failed, despite the serious losses inflicted on the Red Army and extensive territorial gains. The mission to completely destroy Soviet fighting power and force a capitulation was not achieved.
So the Germans needed farmland to grow. Are you saying that the German government should have let their people starve?
Can you repeat that question, please?
The Germans needed farmland to grow. Are you saying that the German government should have let their people starve?
I'm not sure how to answer that.
What he's trying to say,
You said that they.
what I think he's trying to say is that like the Germans needed more farmland because they weren't producing enough crops to feed their army and everyone in their territory. So they tried to go into Moscow and get farmland to feed their people. So you're saying he should have let his people starve?
No, I'm not saying that he should have let his people starve. I just think that invading also wasn't the best idea, and it wasn't all going to be used for farmland. It also was going to be used for like homes and stuff for his troops. But I'm not saying that he should have let them starve. I'm just saying that it should have been not invading. During this battle, 2.8 million people were killed. This is proof that Hitler's actions are classified as crimes against humanity. He also violates the Roman statute by these mass killings. Here's proof. For the purpose of the statute, crimes against humanity means any of the following acts were committed as a part of a widespread, systematic attack directed against any civilization population with no knowledge of the attack. And this is a long list, and the first on the list is murder, and clearly he murdered 20 million people, so it is definitely a crime against humanity. Also, Hitler had a plan to invade Moscow. If he was making a plan to invade, how could this be self-defense? This plan was called Operation Barbarossa. This excerpt from Britannica.com, a reliable source. Hitler and his generals had originally scheduled the invasion of the USSR for mid-May 1941, but the unseen necessity for invading Yugoslavia and Greece in April of that year forced them to postpone the Soviet campaign to late June. If he had planned the attack or the schedule of the attack, there is no way this could have been self-defense.
What happened after he invaded the Soviet Union? Like how did it all unfold? I know World War II, but was there like any did the Soviets retaliate?
So basically, the Soviets did retaliate, but then that forced the Germans to go back to their original home, and then the Soviets came into Russia and attacked.
You said the Soviets went into Russia. Are you saying that they were previously in Russia?
Or they went to, after Hitler came to attack the Soviets fought them then, and then they went back to invade on Hitler.
For these reasons, Adolf Hitler should be found guilty of crimes against humanity because of the Holocaust and invasion of the Soviet Union. Thank you for your time.
Well, this is kind of answered this earlier, but so do you think it's just Hitler that deserves to be charged as crimes against humanity, or are there other people that could have led up to Hitler and made him do crimes against humanity?
I think it's mostly Hitler because he's going to living on and in charge of the Nazis. He started it, but because there's so many Nazis that they wouldn't be able to get all of them, so mainly just Hitler.
Yeah, that was just clear.
Any other questions from the justices? This is your last chance to kind of ascertain any information from them before we let them step down. Okay, seeing none, you guys may step down. Again, a big hand, please. I do better check in with your table partner. what did you learn from that argument? Ready? Great. Yeah. That's really stressful at first. And see how.
May the defense begin their oral arguments.
May it please the court. My name is Tony Starks, and I'm here today representing Adolf Hitler, the defendant in this case. Your Honors, Adolf Hitler is not guilty of crimes against humanity for 3 reasons. First, Führer Hitler engaged in a war of self-defense, not a war of aggression. Second, Führer Hitler did not violate any customs of war. And third, no actions were systematically committed against civilian populations. Before I begin, I will ask that each justice wipe away their preconceived biases of guilt around Germany and Hitler. And as honorable justices, imagine the actions committed were done by the United States. Would you view actions and outcomes differently? I will remind you, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. It is all a matter of perspective. And all I ask is that you be willing to consider World War II from the German perspective. Now, to my first point. Adolf Hitler engaged in a war of self-defense, not a war of aggression. Imagine if you were beaten and robbed. All of your possessions and money were ripped away from you. And now you sit bloody, beaten, and broken on the side of the street as your robber continues to walk past you day after day, night after night, taunting you, never stops to check on you, but just leaves you to rot in despair, depression, and dysfunction. Now imagine one day you built up the courage to stand up to your oppressor. You stopped them and demanded and took back your home, your money, and your pride. Would you be a robber? Or would you be a man of great courage? A villain? Or a hero?
So you're trying to compare this to Hitler?
Yes, Your Honor.
So are you like, you say that you take back your homeland and your people and your pride, but he also tried to take back all of your rage, which really wasn't his in the first place.
That's a fantastic point. And so let's begin first by looking at the Treaty of Versailles that concluded World War I. World War I was found to be completely the fault of Germany, only by those people that defeated Germany. Of course they were to blame them. Germany ended the war with an armistice. As an armistice, they said, we will stop fighting, not that we are to fault, not that we surrender. It was an armistice. However, then the Allied forces all got together, bullied the Germans, and said, no, you are completely at fault. You started it, even though they did not. And then they forced them to follow the following things. They stripped Germany of 25,000 square miles of their territory. Thanks, I'll take your shirt. Then they said they took away Germany's colonies and gave them to the Allied powers. Sweet, that's mine. I'll take that from you. They limited the German military to only 100,000 men. In the United States today, they have around 2 million people serving in the military in various roles and capacities. Imagine that 2 million was stripped down to 1/7 of the population. And so now they would only have around 200,000 people, or stripped down 1/7 of its size. Now it would only have around 200,000 people in the military. You are not allowing Germany to protect itself anymore if you decimate its military to that degree. It forced Germany to pay $31.4 billion in reparations to other countries. So not only are they taking everything from Germany, but they're saying, you need to pay for all this stuff too. They couldn't pay. You know what happened to Germany? Economic despair. Their money became worthless as they printed more and more. Inflation grew and grew and grew. And so now you have more and more people living on the streets in poverty, dying from this economic disaster that was perpetrated on Germany. Germany is sitting on the side of the road, beaten. And so now Adolf Hitler is forced to say no Germany can do better. We need to rise back up. And so he created a vision. Yes, did he take more than what Germany was? Absolutely. Why? Because they needed to have self-sufficiency. They needed Lebensraum, and they needed that living space. They needed farmland. If they had those things, then they could be a self-sufficient society. And therefore, it was justified. This was not a war of aggression. This is a war of self-defense. Yes, Your Honor.
So if everything is taken away from them, does that like give them the right to kill like 6 million people?
This is a fantastic point. And so what I think you're getting into is the disgusting nature of warfare. War is brutal. War is terrible. So let me get to my second point here. I would ask you guys to close your eyes and imagine. What is it that war looks like? Is it bloody? Is it terrible? Is it horrifying? Of course it is. War by definition pits two groups of people against each other in an armed conflict. And even a surface level understanding of the past will illustrate the atrocious nature of warfare throughout history. And of course, upon a deeper dive, you'll soon realize that war is, excuse my language, hell. As two sides struggle against each other, horrific actions ensue. So what then constitutes customs of war? Multiple, yes, Your Honor?
Like, if you really the Blitz, like he intentionally bombed Britain over, I think, 3 months, and it's like war, you don't have to kill the civilians in order to save your point. Well, you don't have to kill the civilians in order to win. Like, the civilians aren't any part of it, so yeah.
So you're illustrating that people have done this, right? People have committed actions against these other populations that are maybe not soldier populations. And so two things that I would bring up. So you're talking about the Blitz in Britain. Your Honor is talking about the atomic bombs in Japan. I'll bring up two additional historical examples. I bring up the Assyrians dating back 4,000 years ago, which was the earliest recorded civilization to engage in siege warfare. Siege warfare oftentimes said you surround them and then you starve the population in order to get them to give up. That is a custom of war throughout time. The Blitz is very similar to that. Now you look at another custom of war that is total warfare. You can date back to the American Revolution. You can go back to the Civil War. You can go back to all these different situations. Total war is when you engage in trying to devastate all aspects of the society, because all aspects of the society are relevant to war. What constitutes a civilian, specifically in World War II? Everyone is engaged in the propaganda efforts. Everyone is engaged in the industrial complex, trying to create food, rations, military weapons, supplies, whatever it is. Everyone is now a member of that military society. What constitutes a civilian? You have to be willing to engage in total war. If you look at the Punic Wars, the Greeks went in, literally burnt it into the entire ground, put salt on the earth so it could not grow back. Total war. That dates back in history. You think about Sherman's march to the sea. He went through the South, decimating southern cities. Why? Because he needed to break the South's will in order to end the war. Your Honor has just mentioned the attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These are customs of war. They are terrible. I'm not here to say that they are moral or that they are wonderful, that we should be celebrating them. They are terrible, but they are customs of war. Your Honor?
You're saying all is fair in war?
I'm saying that history is suggesting all is fair in war. Yes.
So you're comparing those wars to what the Nazis?
I'm suggesting that those wars illustrate a pattern, and so for something to be considered a crime against humanity or a war crime, it has to violate customs of war. And as you can see, customs of war, one, is a broad term, but two, you have to look at historical precedent. The precedent shows that all is fair in war. This leads me to my third point, my final point. Adolf Hitler did not engage in actions that were systematically committed against civilian populations. As mentioned in point 2, warfare continues to evolve. With the growth of... Yes, sir.
He did kill 6 million Jews in the Holocaust, and that's being civilians. That's not really excusable by
Sorry, can you say that last part again? I apologize.
well, that's not really excusable against anything happening to you. So can you come up with an excuse for that?
an excuse, I don't think is what you're looking for. I think here you're looking for a legal explanation, a legal rationale. And so really what it comes down to is, let's look at World War I. Around 2 million French citizens were killed in World War I. Was that genocide committed against the French? No, I would say it is not. It is acts of war, and these are casualties of war. The loss of life is atrocious and horrible. I am not trying to suggest that it's justified or that it's good. But again, I am simply saying that casualties are a part of war, an unfortunate, horrible part of war. Yes, Your Honor.
But didn't the Nazis target people in genocide?
Anti-Semitism, I think, is what's wrong. Like, when you go against Judaism.
Make sure you guys are speaking up, by the way. Yes.
I understand like talking before, but putting people in like concentration camps isn't really like, oh, we all died from the war. It's kind of, you know what, I don't like you. I'm gonna rip you away from your family and change your beliefs for you.
These are difficult things, and so you have to look at prior precedent. Let's look at in 1941, December 7th, 1941, a day that lived in infamy. Japan attacked on Pearl Harbor. In response to the attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States decided to create internment camps for Japanese Americans. And so it rounded those individuals up and put them in concentration areas, put them in these internment camps, Now, was that legal or was that illegal? Let's look at what the courts ruled. In the United States Supreme Court, in Korematsu versus the United States, they found that that was constitutional under the U.S. Constitution at that time. You can disagree with that. You can dislike it. That is all absolutely justified. However, historical precedent suggests that at times of war, certain actions become allowable that would not be allowable in other times.
Well, I'm pretty sure that if you look at that case, they put them in the camps,
Internment camps?
internment camps because like of the attack on Pearl Harbor, but Hitler just didn't like Jews, and he just wanted everyone to be like him. And that's why, like, from what I've heard, like that's why he put the Jews in the concentration camps.
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you saying that if somebody else does something bad, that excuses you to do the same thing?
On a moral individual level, that is a very complex and challenging question. On a legal level, I think that is kind of how law operates. You use prior precedent to establish what is allowed and what is not allowed when it is an ambiguous situation. And so from a legal standpoint, I believe the answer is yes.
Also, you said that most civilians should be considered part of their country's military. So when the Germans invaded Poland, the Polish people were...
This time, thank you very much, Your Honor. All right, do me a favor, take a second, chat with your table partner about that argument. Ready? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's very stressful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's very stressful. We're going to you guys stand up and walk to break. Hold on. Here a second. You guys are going to discuss and deliberate what's the crimes of humanity. You five are like a scientist, right? You think about as you go through this discussion, you're going to have to write a judicial opinion. You guys have to write a judicial opinion. You're thinking about not only what side you're deciding on, but why you're deciding. Have a really rich discussion out there, evaluating both perspectives, trying to not just go out there and say, like 50,000 roughly. And then ultimately it will be just a majority of the All rise. You may be seated. That was stressful, guys. That was stressful. Derek, where's Derek at? There, Derek, will you facilitate the conversation here for a second? So you guys are now taking on the role of justices. Or are you guys suggesting that Hitler is guilty or is he not guilty based off of your knowledge and the evidence that was presented? So Derek, you take it away, man.
I think, like, I think your points, some of them were like made sense, but
Oh, please attack me, by the way. Like I'm not attacking, but
I
kind of deconstruct my arguments. Like I was trying to clearly do something. Yes, sir.
I also think that doesn't justify what Hitler did to like with the Holocaust and like invading Poland and like everything he did